Hey all, it's Cameron here from the Snow Building in BYU, Idaho. Um, just hanging out here, practicing a little bit, and just gonna start talking here in a sec. So I've had a lot of thoughts recently about potential people with disabilities. A lot of things have kind of spurred on this thought. Just kind of for context's sake, right now I am on my break from school. Got about a 6-7 week break, and pardon me, I am working right now, and I've had a lot of thoughts about doing some Facebook Live events talking about autism spectrum disorders. For those who might not be aware, I do have Asperger's. It was diagnosed when I was 8, and I have a brother who has autism who was diagnosed about the same time I was. And our family's actually gone all over the country speaking at different autism conferences, that kind of thing, talking about overcoming obstacles to achieve our potential. We've talked about obstacle removal through school, family life, employment, secondary school, all kinds of things. But sorry about that. But I encountered some situations recently with a particular young man who has a disability. And I can't say much about it, but I can say that both the way that others interacted with him and the way that that I have been able to kind of interact with him has caused me to reflect on experiences I've had with drawing out the potential within other people and drawing out that potential in myself. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. The first thing to know is that just as a basic belief that I subscribe to, I believe that we're all children of a loving Heavenly Father. I do believe that firmly with my whole heart. And we live in a fallen world. We live in a world where some people deal with all kinds of different situations. Some people deal with disabilities. Some people deal with family situations that might be less than ideal. We live in a world where things can seem harsh and unfair. And I do believe that if not in this life, then certainly in the next life, that those things will be compensated for. But I also believe in this life that, that there are opportunities to grow and to learn and to achieve potential. And that potential can be different from person to person. So in relating to this young man, some other people that I know and associate with think he was so limited that they couldn't let him do a whole lot. And I've recently been able to find a way to kind of let him do a little bit more and show those people that he is capable, and that he does have something to contribute. A lot of times when we are unfamiliar with something, we tend to kind of shy away from it. We tend to be afraid of it. And that can happen a lot with disabilities. They can be very unfamiliar to people who aren't familiar with it. And that's okay. It's natural to be afraid of what we don't know about. And that's why I want to tackle going live. And I'm going to do a series of videos over the next few weeks, tackling different subjects about autism spectrum disorders and about disabilities. And part of my reasoning for that is I believe that that perfect love casteth out all fear. And I believe that as we understand each other, we can be less afraid of each other. I believe that people with autism have something to contribute in this world, and people with disabilities do. We all do. And I feel very strongly about this. Strongly enough that it's been kind of poking at my mind all day, and so I'm taking a break in my practicing to kind of talk about it. One thing to know when you're talking about the autism spectrum, you're talking about a spectrum. And I'm going to use autism as a specific example, but it relates very well to all kinds of disabilities. Autism spectrum disorders are a spectrum. That means that there's a very, very broad way that it affects people. Some people like me are fairly functional, and by functional I mean can live kind of on their own, might be able to be married and have children and maybe a career, those kinds of things. And let's see. Sorry, brain fart. But so when you're dealing with autism, you're dealing with a spectrum. You're dealing with a lot of different ways this affects people. So there are people like me who do have a family. I have a wife, 2 children, that kind of thing. Hello, Josh Smith, or Dr. Strange, whichever you go by. But there are people kind of in that vein. There are also people under the autism umbrella who will need assisted living throughout their lives. And I firmly believe that each person with autism has potential, and each person with disabilities has potential. And what it is it's a matter of drawing it out. So that's kind of the basis there. I've noticed in the case of this particular young man I was talking about earlier, that the way that people interact with him matters. The way that people instruct him matters. A lot of times it has to be approached as guiding somebody through the process of learning it so that they can be successful at it, whatever the task or the project or whatever it is. I'm grateful for people who have done that with me. There are times I take things very literally and might not know step A to step C. I might need help getting from step A to B to C, and I'm very grateful for people who have instructed me in that way. And sometimes we all need a little help like that. But I feel very strongly that people with disabilities have potential within them. Just as another backstory, this situation had got me thinking about another situation. So after I had served an LDS mission and had come home, there was a situation. I was at a presentation with my brother, an autism presentation, and we were on a panel of 3 other young adults with autism spectrum disorders. And we were asked a question anonymously from a teacher, a school teacher, who asked about a situation with a young man, a student that she had that had an Asperger's diagnosis, but his parents hadn't told him. He'd had the diagnosis for 3 years. Parents hadn't told him. And she could see how much turmoil the student was going through as a result. And she asked, is this okay or is this not okay? The first thing from that situation is the parents were so afraid of the diagnosis and what it could mean and their kid being weird or whatever, that they weren't teaching their kid about it. The other aspect of this is, so the teacher asked it very indirectly, so she got very literal answers from most of us, but I could kind of tell that there was more there, and that she was wondering what she needed to do. So I specifically talked about teaching the parents about autism spectrum disorders, what that diagnosis can mean, and that is not doesn't have to be a huge limiting thing in their lives. It can be something that they can still live a fulfilling life with. And so, so that situation kind of has been kind of brewing in my mind as well. But I wanted to talk about that because I do believe that as we learn more about things that scare us, like for some people that can be disabilities, there's a lot of understanding, a lot of growth that can happen, and a lot more potential that we can draw out. So that's what I wanted to talk about. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask me. I did want to announce that I'm going to kind of do some videos like this. And if you have any feedback, feel free to give it to me. I know I've kind of stumbled through this a little bit, but the main purpose behind this is to dispel myths and to dispel fear of autism and of disabilities in general, so that we can help draw out the best potential in everybody. So thanks so much for watching. Much love to you all, and I'll be posting videos like this very soon.